Now, we reported last Thursday, we had an interview. We were trying to get some information from the FCC about their planned news study that was going to intrude into the content of newsrooms. It was going to study the newsrooms. So we tried to get some information about that study. They completely stonewalled us. You saw that if you watched that on the nightly news last Thursday. Then on Friday, we reviewed it, talked a little bit more detail about it on the Alex Jones radio show. And then Friday evening, the FCC announced that they are going to cancel that study, if you can believe them. This is a report from the Daily News. It says the FCC backs down from a study and won't ask journalists how they gather the news. Under a government research project, questioning reporters on their news gathering has caused the FCC Commission to rethink its approach. Well, maybe and maybe not, because if you look at their article, it says the FCC spokesperson announced that the questions targeted to journalists would be scrapped and the study would be reworked. Well, it wasn't just journalists that they were going to be asking questions to. They were also going to be asking questions to editors, to managers, to many people there, even to newspapers. The FCC has no jurisdiction over newspapers. The FCC was created simply to allocate in an orderly manner the frequencies that were available that belong to the public. They're not there to get involved in content. And so you have to ask yourself, what are they going to do in the future? Are they going to continue to ask these other questions? Are they going to try to involve themselves in the content that people are putting out? You know, when this was reported, the Washington Post, as Paul Joseph Watson pointed out, had the headline, "Proposed FCC Study of News Organizations Sparks Conservative Outcry." And they quickly changed that and removed the word conservative because the liberal papers weren't really concerned about that. Was this planned to be something like we see with the IRS, where they start auditing all these different Tea Party groups and then giving the information to their opponents to embarrass them or to single them out for criminal investigation? If they're going to embed themselves into studios, would they find people that were the movers and shakers against the government's agenda and then target them individually? It's very troubling to see this kind of thing happen. And it now brings up the point as to what is the FCC going to do about the Comcast merger? We already know that the mainstream media has effectively merged with the government, but we know that the government wants to get not only the content providers, which Comcast is part of, but also the delivery system. They want to have one company that they can deal with, one person they can deal with, instead of just 5 media companies. They'll now, if these first and second largest providers merge, they're going to have one giant company and 3 smaller ones, so they will probably merge, and then you can eventually have one. That is a very dangerous situation. What will the FCC do about that? We'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, the Ukraine is actually deposed the dictator that was there, Yanukovych. He's now on the run. This is reported from Business Insider that they have now put out an arrest warrant for Viktor Yanukovych. They say it's clear that he's lost power in Kiev, and they put on Facebook, of all places, that they were going to come after him for the deaths of protesters. And now it leaked the details of his palatial residence. It's half the size of the country of Monaco. It's got a private zoo, private golf course, a floating restaurant that looks like a pirate ship. A little bit of irony there. But are they going to get rid of this dictator and then jump into the frying pan of the EU? Because we've seen how the EU bankers have deposed elected leaders and put bankers in charge in both Italy and Greece. This is something they ought to watch, the debate that's coming up between Nigel Farage and Nick Clegg. This is going to be an amazing debate. As the BBC reported it, the EU debate with Nigel Farage will be tough for Nick Clegg. That is the understatement of the century. I would pay to see this on pay-per-view, to see someone debate Nigel Farage, and especially on the EU. This is something people in Ukraine seriously, though, should take a look at and see why those in Britain and many other places are concerned about the EU and why they should stay out of it. But this is going to be an amazing debate, and I can't understand anyone wanting to get into that debate unless they've got the mentality of a third-rank bank clerk, as Nigel Farage would point out.
The globalists have controlled the mainstream media for a long time, but now they're expanding, making the weaponization even more vicious and deceptive. All the major networks are state-run.
We are partnering this year with the NFL.
The NFL has become a political weapon against the Second Amendment and pushes Obamacare. MSNBC tells us that our children belong to the state.
We have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities.
The brainwashing media machine has been turned turned up on high, and it's time for humanity to double down on the true people's media and strike back against the tyrants that are destroying our civilization with their lies and fraud. We are the resistance. You are the resistance. You are the info war. It is more important than ever to realize that we are not the alternative media. We are the true media. The establishment dinosaur press is dying.
We are in an information war, and we are losing that war.
Join us at InfoWarsNews.com and PrisonPlanet.tv. Members can share their memberships with up to 11 people. By subscribing, you will literally be buying war bonds in the info war to expand our operation in the face of the tyrants. Join us at PrisonPlanet.tv.